And now for an amazing true story. From the book of Acts. Chapter 9, verses 26 to 31.
Saul, also known as Paul, reached Jerusalem at dusk after a long journey from Damascus. Lamps began to glow in hundreds of windows. Ah, home sweet home. As a young man, Saul had traveled to Jerusalem to study, and he'd made quite a mark on the city as one of the religious leaders, hunting down anyone who followed Jesus. In fact, he had been so intent on getting rid of believers, he even traveled to Damascus to root them out there as well. But on the way, Saul met Jesus, and instead of arresting believers, he became one of them. For many years, Saul learned everything he could about Jesus, and he shared that story with many, many people. But when a group of people in Damascus tried to have him killed, he decided it was time to return to Jerusalem. Now the flickering city lights seemed to welcome him back.
Tonight, I'll get a real bed instead of camping by the road.
Saul heard where some of the believers were meeting, and he hurried through the city's dusty streets until he found a home.
Surely they'll offer me a warm meal and a place to stay.
A smiling young woman opened the door.
Hello?
I've just arrived from a long journey.
We've got hot stew in the kettle and an extra sleeping pallet by the fire. And what did you say your name was?
I didn't. It's, Saul.
The young woman flinched, and her eyes widened.
You're Saul? Saul of Tarsus?
Yes, but I've changed.
Saul could see the fear in the woman's eyes.
Wait here.
She disappeared. Saul could hear footsteps and troubled voices. At last, the woman returned.
I'm sorry, but you can't stay here. You have to leave.
Before Saul could respond, she shut the door with shaking hands.
But I follow Jesus now.
Tired and hungry, Saul turned away. He couldn't blame the believers for fearing him, especially after all the terrible things he'd done in Jerusalem back before he met Jesus.
I guess I'll find an inn.
It was completely dark now as Saul tried to remember his way through the city streets. He'd already taken one wrong turn when he heard some footsteps behind him. Saul! Saul! Saul turned to see a young man running toward him. In the light from a window, he spied wiry red hair and a big, wide grin.
That's me.
I came after you as soon as I heard you were turned away.
You actually want to talk to me?
Of course. I've spoken with friends from Damascus, and they told me the whole story. How you met Jesus, how you've been preaching in his name.
You believe me?
I do.
No offense, but it doesn't do me a lot of good when no one else in Jerusalem sees how I've changed.
They will, after I get Peter and the other leaders on board.
You'd really do that for me? What did you say your name was?
I didn't. It's Barnabas. Saul smiled. The meaning of Barnabas made it a very fitting name for this young man.
You're called Son of Help.
Yeah, well, I used to be called Joseph, but they changed my name when I started helping people out around here.
I'll call you anything you'd like if you really can help me.
The next morning, Barnabas took Saul to see Peter and James and some others who followed Jesus.
Wait right here. I'll just, pave the way a little.
Barnabas entered the house. Moments later, he heard a thundering voice that must have been Peter's. You brought who? Actually, it's whom. I thought you said Saul. I did, but Saul of Tarsus? He's changed. Oh, is that what he says? Another voice chimed in. Saul thought it might be James, the brother of Jesus.
Well, let's hear Barnabas out. He's always shown wisdom.
Fine, okay.
Well, you remember when Saul left Jerusalem a few years back to go arrest believers in Damascus?
He was the worst.
But on the way there, he met Jesus. The Lord spoke to him in person.
You're serious? Barnabas shared the entire story as Saul waited outside, nervously, tapping his fingers. This is hopeless. At last, the door flew open as Saul jumped to his feet and Peter strode outside. So here you are, the greatest enemy Jesus' followers have ever known.
Fine, I get the point. I'll just...
And now, one of the greatest defenders of those who believe. Saul's mouth dropped open as Peter gave him a great big bear hug, and the other believers poured out behind Peter to greet Saul too.
I don't know what to say.
Just keep telling the story.
of Jesus.
Saul took a deep breath and stood back and looked at this group of friends who had chosen to accept him. Barnabas grinned and gave a thumbs up.
No one will ever stop me from talking about Jesus.
Because Barnabas had seen the change in Saul and stood up for him, Saul was accepted by the believers in Jerusalem and able to share the story of Jesus all over the city.